But I'm gonna be real clear about kind of the content that I create. We are very dedicated into finding roleplay situations and servers that are safe for women, people of color, queer players, black women, especially in Red Dead roleplay where we're facing both the racism and the sexism. So we didn't even know who this character was that signed her name, but I very, very clearly and very directly and very strongly said any woman who is going to ally with men who are dedicated on targeting women who are alone in a roleplay server and continuously harassing them and making it impossible for them to have roleplay is a pick-me-ass bitch. And she is, and I will stand by that. If you're choosing to make the experience for other women in a server that hard, you're a bitch along with your bitch gang. And that is exactly what I was relaying in my stream commentary, and is exactly what I continue to think right now. And again, didn't know who this was. Talking about literally an idea of a person. If there was a woman that was supporting this gang, harassing and killing women in their businesses, this person is a pick-me-ass bitch. What would we call a pick-me-ass in 1901? We're gonna call her a heifer. We're gonna call her and her whole gang a lapdog. And this is where I'm assuming they got a little confused, because I called them all lapdogs. Saw a name, anyone could have signed her name. So we were just saying, if there is a woman involved, this is a lapdog ass pick me bitch. And a lapdog, if y'all don't know what it is just someone who takes orders from another person willingly. I use that same language for all of them because it was about cowardice, not identity. Hey anyone's, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here ever, welcome for the first time. I'm Meela Vanderbuilt, and today we are doing, or we're getting into roleplay things. I'm primarily going to be talking about Red Dead roleplay, but I also have some commentary on GTA roleplay, Second Life roleplay, and just my general thoughts and some of the things that I've noticed in these communities in general over the past couple of years. Really, since stepping away from Second Life roleplay back in, I think it was November, and then making the decision to not stream Second Life tutorials or Second Life roleplay content on my channel, I have also taken a bit of a break from GTA roleplay. So this time it has been just discovery of me trying to figure out what games I like, how I want to approach content, and really what I want to do with all of my channels and my platform in general. But while being on a break from those two platforms, I have jumped into the world of Red Dead roleplay. Now, Red Dead roleplay is very similar to GTA roleplay. It's called RedM, just like there's 5M. It's created by the same individuals who created 5M, and there are various servers that are just set in the world of Red Dead. Now, Red Dead is meant to take place around like the 1880s to the early 1900s, so it's a different time period, it's a different experience, and it's a different map. And at first, I genuinely thought that the roleplay, thought it would be different, thought it would be more immersive, more story-driven, more respectful than GTA. But the longer I roleplayed and the further I got into it, the more I realized it started to feel really familiar, and not in a good way. But I do intend to bring my Red Dead content over here. I think we had some amazing streams. I think some of the visuals were really cool, and we actually started to build a really solid character with a really solid backstory and a personality that has taken off on her own, which I'm absolutely obsessed with. I have a character named Mayhem Vanderbilt, who we put a lot of work into coming up with her story, coming up with phrases that she would use, coming up with her language, her accent, all of these different things. And I cannot wait to actually bring that content over here. But before I start to bring my Red Dead content over here to YouTube, I want to give you some real context into what's been happening behind the scenes and some things to look out for if you're deciding to get into Red Dead roleplay, or just so we can have a broader conversation on roleplay in general. So this isn't a rant. I'm going to really share a lot about my own experience, but this is really a commentary on roleplay culture in general, because whether it is Second Life, GTA, or RedM, these same patterns are showing up over and over again, and I just want to have an open dialogue about it. But I mean, honestly, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're queer, or if you just play a bold, assertive character that isn't meant to be passive or quiet, then I think you'll get what I mean. All right, so I'm going to be touching on some sensitive topics. I'm going to be talking very openly about racism, bias, sexism, all of the things, because these are things that show up for us in gaming. And this is a lot of what we experience no matter what game we play. The moment we create a character that doesn't look like the norm, the moment we speak up and our voices are recognized as being a woman or being something other than what they expect. So we're going to be talking about a lot of these type of topics. So if it makes you uncomfortable, I hope not, because, you know, we're just going to hit them straight on. But I want to talk first about just some of the bias that we come across in roleplay spaces. I think my experience in Second Life, and generally speaking, a lot of the times, like, racism and sexism are directly in your face. Second Life also has a slew of other issues when it comes to, like, essay things and weird things with imagery of children that I think also was a part of the fuel as to why I wanted to distance myself from the platform in general. But, you know, I think for years we have seen Confederate flags on the marketplace. We see people putting them up around our homes if you're a Black character and they find out in game. We see them all over the mainland. People also throw around slurs with no fear of real consequence. You know, it's a very anonymous platform and people feel comfortable being just blatant about it. And it can be constant, and for years it was ignored by the platform. I think they've done some things as of late to really address a lot of these issues, but for years it was ignored, and that was just the experience that you kind of expected going in there. Then when I moved to GTA, this is where the issue kind of shifted. It's not always as obvious. Well, it wasn't initially. It wasn't always as obvious, but it is everywhere. The way people treat women, the way people treat queer players, how some characters even refuse to interact with a woman if they suspect that that individual is not the gender that they prefer behind the screen. Like, roleplay doesn't matter. Their real world entitlement does. So it's hostile, it's dismissive, and the second you're not soft-spoken, flirty, or differential, you get ignored, harassed, or punished. So when I came to RedM, I genuinely thought maybe it would be different. The only reason it seemed better at first, and this is what I've come to realize, is because we brought the good role players with us. Like, I came in there with a strong group of role players, and I surrounded myself with those role players. There was only maybe one or two individual, actually just one other individual that I met in the server that became a part of my regular role play. Everyone else that I was surrounded by were people that I came in with, or that came from our community, or that were in our Discord server and decided to join. Once I was surrounded by the wider community and having more interactions with the wider community, that is when I noticed those same issues came back. This time they were wrapped in historical role play where the same kind of behaviors play out, but it's just really under a different aesthetic, and it's a different sort of bias that we're dealing with here. In GTA, a lot of these guys look at women characters like they have some sort of ownership over them. Like, they are, like, we're there for them in some regard, whether it's to be their romantic partners or whatever it is. They just feel like we can't have our own separate role play that's separate from serving them in some way. So that's not the issue in RedM, so to speak, because I have come across a couple of people with those undertones in their role play, but it's really, there's a lot of general bias. That's all I can say. That's I'm gonna show you examples of it so you'll know what I mean. But what's worse, I think, in RedM is who gets to draw the line and who gets to decide what is biased, what is racist, what is offensive, are usually individuals who haven't been on the receiving end of any of those actions, especially when it comes to race and especially when it comes to players of color, because this is the time period for Red Dead is happening very close to the end of slavery and very close to the end of like the Civil War, and there were a lot of those undertones in that time period. And unfortunately, people do use these situations as an excuse to allow that type of behavior or allow their own biases about people to really come through. But in general speaking, it's usually people who haven't experienced racism who are deciding what is racist. And if you dare speak up, you are suddenly the problem. You're villainized for calling it out, for reacting and not playing along quietly. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Okay, so I really want to start off by sharing my experience in the server. There were a couple situations where I came across things that, one, were directly racist, two, some things that felt a little biased, that had some racist undertones. And then three, like literally a couple weeks of direct harassment, not only to me, but to my community. And we're just gonna talk about how that all played out. So I was enjoying myself. I think I attributed a lot to the server that was just generally me liking Red Dead roleplay, or me liking Red Dead in general. I think the map is beautiful. I think the game is beautiful. And I think the concept of role-playing in a time period where I can create a character that is completely different than any character that I've ever created was a lot of fun for me. So when I went into the server, again, I don't recommend staying in one server. Honestly, as the harassment started to pick up in the server for me, I started to realize I needed to join other places. I didn't want all my eggs in one basket, no matter how much I was enjoying it. But again, I think I attributed to me just enjoying Red Dead roleplay to me enjoying that server. I don't think it was that server specifically. And like I said, we came in with a group of role players. We were really building our own experience. But basically, when I joined Dusty Trails, that's the server that we're talking about, I was just trying to build a life for my character and get used to the actual game itself. I had never played Red Dead Redemption 2, so this was my first time even experiencing the game in general. I typically enjoy saloon roleplays. After a ton of failed attempts to work at other saloons that said they were hiring, so basically on all of these saloons, they say they're hiring, they put a number of the person to get in touch with. I had sent out so many of those with zero response. One day, another character that knew that I was looking for a saloon job, he introduced me to a couple of individuals that owned a saloon and they owned a ranch. This is the role play that we usually do. We do restaurant role play. We usually own businesses and restaurants in GTA. We've done like some legal things, but you know, I'd like to kind of start off in a position where I can clock in for a certain amount of time, have interactions where I can keep the role play focused on like having a team and a staff and being with people instead of like constantly running in circles with people. So this guy introduced me to this couple that owned this place. I saw an opportunity to work for another person's business. So I took the opportunity. I thought it would still be a lot of fun. I figured there would probably be opportunities for me to bring in some people in my community and we do these like live role play services that we like to do. So this couple that owned the saloon, I feel like we're gonna have to come up with names for them because it's gonna get confusing. We'll call them Tom and Sally. So Tom and Sally own the saloon. Tom and Sally also own a ranch that I wasn't working at, but one day they were planning this big staff meeting that I was excluded from the invite. So I also had a friend who got hired the same day I did. He was going to work at the ranch. I was going to work at the saloon. He gets an invite to the staff meeting. They're talking about it in Discord. I ask like what the details are because I'm apparently missing access to a channel or I can't see it, but I keep seeing mention of the staff meeting that they're having. They made it very clear that I was not meant to come to this meeting. They said, you don't need to be there. Once they saw that I was in the channels where they were discussing it, they were like, you don't have to come. I wasn't even looking specifically at the fact that they didn't want me at that meeting. I was just like, oh, you know, it's probably unrelated to the work that I do. But honestly, like, wouldn't this just still be a good opportunity for me to come and meet the other people that are working for this business? I find it interesting. They sent him a telegram to invite him out to the island and not Millie. They didn't know if she was in or not. So the guy who got invited, that was my friend who worked there, he just invited me and we rode up there together. Now, the issue came. So this was I think I was a few days into the server at this point. I'm trying to like make sure I get the timeline right. You know, I spent a couple of days trying to hustle. These streams were just long. My first stream in the server was 11 hours. So it felt like a week, but I think we were only on like day 3 of me being in the server and I didn't really know anyone, especially anyone beyond just the group of people that I came in with and this one friend that also worked at the ranch. But basically after that meeting, we all go our separate ways. And he tells me later on, and this was off stream, that he tells me in character that he was having a conversation with the ranch owner, whose name I already forgot. Bob and Sally. He had a conversation with Bob. And Bob brings up that his character is a Confederate, and that kind of threw me for a loop. And I remember it happened right before I was starting stream, and when I came on stream, I was talking about it on stream that this character said he was Confederate. I had to regroup. I had to think things through because we're new to Red Dead, we're new to Millie. Let me pause, I'm overstimulated. Let me tell you, so far today, all I did, I woke up, well, earlier I came in around noon, like around lunch, and I forget they're a UK server, so there were a bunch of people in here, and I was just trying to be alone and figure out how to work my crafting book. I flew out, because I didn't want to have a conversation with anyone, and I flew back in after I finished work, and I met up with Elias. We went over to the ranch, because they were supposed to be having some meeting for some big order they had. I didn't have to go, they already told me I didn't have to go, but I wanted to meet more people. So I go in, honestly, I zoned the fuck out. Everybody was talking at once, and when everyone starts talking at once, sometimes when they're still on shout, I just like black out and I'm still like finishing up work emails. So I was just kind of zoned out. And then Elias was like, oh, I'm about to do patrols. Do you want to come with me? On his patrol, he tells me the ranch, I forget who he said told him. I don't know if it was Pepper that told him, but they're a Confederate ranch.
Not what I expected coming up into grizzlies like this, but you never know, I guess.
I know. I've heard some people that have had some wild experiences in counties.
Oh, I bet. Some people get into it for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm. It's in my nature to confront people. I sure want to ask them myself, too. Now we up here at their ranch with this information. Millie's seeing red, and we got to figure out where to go from here. And it's so conflicting, because I just got Naya a job And then we talked about Yams working at the saloon, and he was like, he's just bringing in someone that's supposed to be the manager. But I got to confront them, right? Is this true? Before I bring all my black friends to this Confederate ranch. We tried to work through giving this man the benefit of doubt and like how that could make sense in this time period and not be a racist statement. I remember we even went to ChatGPT to understand if there was any way that that kind of statement would make sense in this time period or in this sort of role play without being offensive. Spoiler, there isn't. Even ChatGPT was like, no, girl. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Confederacy in American history represents a government formed in support of slavery. Red Dead roleplay, like I mentioned, exists in the late 1800s to late 1880s to early 1900s. And this is decades after the American Civil War. So when a character says that they are Confederate or they fought for the Confederacy, they're aligning themselves with a system that believed black people are meant to be slaved or enslaved. And to me personally, that just seems like an unnecessary component of roleplay. And like, granted, remember, I'm new to Red Dead roleplay. This is the first server I'm ever in. This is only my like third or fourth day in roleplay in general. So to me, I was like, I understand the time period that we're playing, but that just seems like an unnecessary addition or an unnecessary belief system to try to push out through roleplay. If someone is including that in their roleplay without any real context or complexity or remorse, it's just historical flavor. It just feels like an unnecessary attempt to align with slavery era roleplay that just doesn't need to be there. I remember like trying to fight off the frustration, but I was like, just to make a statement like that in roleplay, especially after hiring my character and me being the only person who looked like me in their business or at that meeting, it felt unnecessary. So I remember I sent a telegram to Bob, the saloon owner. A quick word. Evening, Mr. Pep. No. A little subtle. I feel like it's subtle enough. She's a very direct woman. Can't be too subtle. Can't be too friendly. Asking to speak. No accusations, no public call out. I was just like, I think you and I need to talk. We need to have a conversation. I didn't get an answer. But before I knew it, I was fired, or my character was fired from that saloon. Did they actually fire me? They sure did. I ain't even talked to them in character yet, so that's suspicious. So there was no meeting, there was no clarification, there was nothing. I was just removed from the job. I wasn't kicked out of the Discord, but I ended up just leaving after I saw that I was fired. And I think what made it even more irritating was everything that I had been doing behind the scenes for them.
We're gonna take you on the back burner. Just save me a hot meal for later, all right?
Oh, yeah, I gotta eat these tacos first.
Yeah, here they are, our specialty. Look at all this sugar cane. We can make lots of lemonade. Even within the short amount of time that I had been working there, which was like maybe a day or two. And mind you, I'm not an everyday role player. I usually role play 2 to 3 times a week.
I mean, with the strawberries and lemon.
No, I don't mind at all.
Did they actually fire me? So I'm only in there maybe 2 times a week. So even if you hired me on Wednesday, I probably am not back until Saturday. But even between then, I had been bringing so many people to their business. At one point, they even mentioned they didn't expect like such an uptick in their business. Mind you, every single day I was in there, I was bringing groups of people into their business. I was also planning an event for that Friday for my community. What do y'all think? 6 o'clock Saturday? So we had a bunch of people joining the server just to come to this event for Friday. And then they just fired my character. So it took away her ability to do things like cook or do anything. So it derailed the event that we already had been working on for a few days for that upcoming Friday. But basically, I'm on stream at this point, irritated as hell, spiraling out because we notice all of this in real time. We get the comment about the Confederate, which he had a conversation with our friend at the time. Remember, he didn't say that directly to me. He said it to a friend. And I'm starting to get frustrated with the mechanics of the game for the simple fact that I wasn't even able to facilitate an event that I had, you know, people joining the server to come to. How you're doing things in the city because I've called it out on stream. But I was gonna let it play out in character, y'all. We were gonna let it play it out. I was getting like increasingly frustrated. At that point, I think they had either the server owner or an admin was in my chat and they were watching and they heard the commentary and they were very quickly, I think, attempting to resolve the situation. But basically, they spent a lot of time reaching out to Bob and Sally to see what happened, why they would say that, what the situation was. And when they got the response from Sally, she said they assumed that I didn't want to work because I'm a streamer, or, you know, and then they were like, she hadn't cooked enough food. But mind you, we had a conversation that I didn't have the level, like you have to have a cooking level, a certain cooking level to cook meals. I didn't have the level required to cook the meals that they had on their menu, or the meals that they had ingredients for. So they were meant to be stocking up with the ingredients for that meals that I could cook so I could add to their menu, which they just never did, and they never communicated it with me. But they told either the owner or the admin that I hadn't cooked enough food, and I don't even know how they justified it. It was literally within a couple of days of hiring me. They hadn't stocked the ingredients that I needed. They said I hadn't cooked enough food, and they chose to not communicate with me. And this was what they said, because they didn't want to have an argument. Hold on, let me read this. Millie was fired from Dewdrop because she never showed up for work. See, now this is where I'm testing it, right? Because we were in that saloon nearly every day. And remember the last conversation we had with these people? They're like, we're going to put the ingredients in there for you to be able to cook at a level 1. So this just feels like bullshit. I want to see what their reason was to see if I thought it was for real. And that was what? Wednesday, and it's Saturday now? Do these people expect you to live your whole life in a server? Let me read. Didn't do any crafting or work for the saloon. She was with us for 5 days. We saw some movement on the storefront as Pepper gave her full access. But we figured just as she was seeing how the webhook worked, nothing significant was removed, not acute. See, so, but why wouldn't you tell this to her? This feels like bullshit. When Elias showed up several times to RP and collected a hefty sum for security work, Millie never came by the saloon or the ranch. Essentially, we saw her briefly at open ranch day for like 5 minutes. Okay, hey, from editing, I did not notice when I was streaming that they said that they had only seen me once for 5 minutes at their ranch. Mind you, they hired me, they took me up to the ranch, they trained me on how to farm chickens and collect eggs and all this random stuff, and just to show me around. So we were up there for well over an hour. And then I also went to that meeting that they tried very insistently for me to not go to. So I had been to their ranch twice for over an hour in 2 days. And that second day was the same day that he was telling Elias he was a Confederate. I haven't seen her since because the bitch wasn't around. A bitch has a job. Pardon? But imagine not telling me, though. It's bullshit, because why would you very swiftly remove me? One, she was on my friends list. She has my DM open. You're still metagaming because you're looking at a webhook to see if I've worked. Yeah, weird. No, you're lying. So now I don't believe none of them. Since Pepper has been scrambling to keep the saloon in stock, neither of us anticipated how popular it would be. And we pay on a weekly schedule, then rather keep track of hours or mess with duty stuff. Pepper removes her from the payroll. Elias had already forgotten we had already paid him. What do I have to do with Elias? And I didn't ask them for any money. That's why I didn't go in for a paycheck. And it was still waiting on y'all to put stuff in your inventory. Did they expect me to go grow the shit for their saloon? Weird. They paid him $1,400, again, irrelevant to me, to keep it from being a big deal. We don't want Millie coming by and having to argue with her that she deposited nothing in storage or storefront. So that's your job. You own a business. If you say I'm not doing my job, you tell me. We don't want to argue with you. Bitch, pardon? She deposited nothing in the storage or storefront showing food was actually being made. We had no ill will or hard feelings towards her. We both just figured the saloon grind wasn't the kind of content she wanted for her channel. Look at all the assumptions you're making. And you're assuming, one, that we're going to have to argue. It's bullshit. Up until this point, pleasant interactions. We have only interacted once, the day they hired me, and a couple like training things. I went up to their ranch and everything, but she said they just decided to fire me because they didn't want an argument. They assumed off bat that I was going to be too argumentative to communicate with, to tell me if they had restocked inventory, to ask me what my schedule was, to ask when I'm even in the server to work for them, to like clarify the things that normal business practices would do within roleplay. They just decided to remove me and didn't want to tell me because they assumed it would be an argument, which to me very blatantly felt like bias. And I was like, there's no way to get around this. One, you're already trying to exclude me from meetings. Your partner is calling himself a Confederate. You're removing me from a job when I start to ask questions about it. And you use the excuse that I'm just too argumentative. Despite the fact that up until that point, we had only had pleasant interactions in general. And then the server owners, so like I said, the server owner admin, I do think it was the server owner, had no issue with that, right? They didn't have any issue with what I think is just very clearly biased. I don't think you can even write that another way. The server owner saw my reaction on stream, pulled me into a ticket, actually came to me in character. They did this whole investigation to understand what the other side or what Bob and Sally did or said or meant by what they said. And then they, of course, recited that same rhetoric about racism being unacceptable and untolerated that every single server says, the same blanket statement that you can copy and paste from every server. It was the same speech without even having an understanding of what racism or bias means outside of the N-word. That's not really an impactful statement. That's not something to say. But they did launch a whole investigation where their priority was questioning the other side to gain an understanding of their perspective, giving them the benefit of the doubt, and ultimately deciding it wasn't racist. At no point did that character, at no point did Bob deny saying that. He confirmed later that he did in fact say that, but their server owners decided that wasn't racist, and the whole situation just wasn't biased in general, and then that wouldn't have a negative impact on my roleplay in general. But they wrote it up as just a misunderstanding. But that was their determination, despite the fact that he said it and despite the context. And I'm very sure he didn't get the same sort of slap on the wrist that I get later on, which I'm going to explain to you. But one thing, to be clear, I genuinely don't think that player is racist, right? He came to me, we had a conversation about it, he apologized, which I respect, and I do think he made a comment without fully understanding the weight or the implication of it.
You know, me and Mr. Elias, we was talking, and he mentioned that he had been a Union soldier, and the way I responded, I realized, now all that this got up, and I've had time to think about it. It just hit the wrong chord, But how I responded is, being growing up in Texas my whole life. I said, with him being a Union soldier, normally we probably wouldn't get along much,
Right.
What
does that mean?
But I wasn't even born until after the war was done, and I was telling them that my folks, they took in everybody at the branch. Just if they needed a hot meal or a place to work or a bed to sleep in, it didn't matter what you looked like or nothing. And I just it got turned out the wrong way, and I really apologize for anything that might have got mixed up that way. And as far as the saloon, I thought you had left state, really. Some folks come around, and I'd asked Elias if he'd seen you, and he said, yeah. And I said, well, could you have her send me a telegram, please? And to see if she wants her name put on the door or whatever. And then a couple other folks come in and said they thought you left state for one reason or the other.
Yeah, I found that interesting, because I've been here every day, and I've been at the saloon. I just figured y'all wake up different times than I do.
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. And I waited a couple of days to hear from you, and then it's one of the things I should have probably come check for myself, but I didn't really know where it was.
Yeah, I think for me, I was just a bit disappointed in the communication, because last we spoke, I thought y'all were giving me more ingredients to be able to cook what I could. So while I couldn't do that, I still brought pretty crowds to the Strawberry Saloon.
Yeah, I just want to apologize for
pretty quick. I'm not like an everyday. I don't wake up every day, so.
Yeah, no, and I usually I'm okay with that, but just hadn't seen you. I've been seeing that you put stuff in the saloon and whatnot, and had some other stuff going on that really I just want to apologize on my end for not being a better boss and not communicating better.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But it really pains me to think that things got misunderstood like that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you said you want to talk, and I said, yeah, we do need to talk so I can get things off my chest too, and just tell you how truly sorry I am about how things went down.
Genuinely think it was a mistake for that comment. And that's something I can respect. People live and learn. It was hard to understand initially that someone wouldn't have that historical context or understand the history behind that. But again, we don't have the same lived experience. If you're not in the receiving end of the type of bias that comes out of things that are like that, it is very easy to kind of be ignorant to the situation and not know what's going on. I accepted his apology we were going to move on. What I want to really emphasize right here was that the server's investigation wrote it off as a non-issue, ignoring the fact that he did actually say the comment, because all of that happened before he came to me and apologized. But they were also just very committed to understanding the full scope of the situation and understanding what happened on his side for him to say something that was in fact offensive. And this was a courtesy that I was not given later. And that is what we're going to get into. But I just want to highlight here. Like I said, I don't think the character is racist. I think this did put a sour taste in my mouth, and a lot of people that were joining the server, it put a sour taste in the mouth, just like seeing it all play out. But, you know, I said they looked into it. They didn't believe it was a racist comment. He didn't mean anything by it. And then, of course, we saw his apology live on stream. But I want to really highlight right now just how differently we're treated. Because later on, we are going to see me make some real bold choice statements, not about just one individual, but about a whole gang of people that have been harassing me nonstop for weeks. And I used some real strong language, and we're going to talk about that. But zero courtesy was given to me. No investigation was launched, no questioning, no wanting to hear my perspective or understand it. So I just want to highlight how differently we're treating in this case. And this is what I'm talking about when servers don't have a uniform way of how they handle reports or situations or escalations, but they made a lot of space for him to make a mistake about racism. But later on, they're going to call me sexist, and we're going to get into that. But ultimately, like I said, it put a bad taste in my mouth. And it wasn't even the Confederate comment that I think put the bad taste in my mouth. It was players just removing me from a job with zero explanation or zero discussion, under the assumption that I would be difficult, that I wouldn't be cooperative, even though this was one of my first couple days in the server and we had nothing but pleasant interactions up until that point. But they made these assumptions about my character, even though I was also waiting on them to provide me the necessary tools to even do the job. And to put it even further, that's not something they're known for doing, and that's not something they do to other players. Other players confirmed this was out of the norm for them, that they very specifically regarded or handled my situation that way, and no one had ever seen them do that to other characters. But anyway, the vibe shifted. I think the vibe definitely shifted. It took a lot of, I think, mental work. It took a lot of content work to just try to refocus things. But the overall vibe in the server and from other players was that I was the problem for bringing that up. A couple of interactions that I had, people went out of character to tell me or call me stupid or like just really try to throw insults at me for bringing up a racist statement being thrown my way in character.
Of like 7 other people.
Okay, great.
We was at the fucking, okay,
so check
up
with
a
all of
minute,
them because they sure did.
Because I'm not being funny, but you were going around calling somebody a fucking racist, you dumb fuck. Are you?
I am not under the assumption that a vast majority of these characters in that city or these players in that city didn't think the same. That how dare I bring up a racist comment that was made to me. But I think that's what really showed me early on that once you speak up, they don't just disagree. They genuinely think you're the problem. But yeah, after all that, like I said, I left it alone. I was in there with another streamer who actually introduced me to the server, and I mentioned it to him, and I think very quickly got irritated and upset by it, but was also told by an admin to not bring it up, to not talk about it. But anyway, like I said, I don't think that player was racist. I think he made a comment without understanding the true weight or the historical accuracy of it, or even what he was possibly saying. I think he was, I don't want to say baited, but pulled into a conversation that he wasn't equipped to have very quickly and did not respond correctly. And that is the impression I got from having a conversation with him. But again, that conversation came well after their full investigation into them. And I think, but even beyond just that comment, him and his wife were wildly biased in how they regarded my character or discarded my character in a way that they have not done to other characters historically in their time in the server, and making assumptions about who my character was based on absolutely nothing that had ever happened. And I think the bigger issue for me was how their leadership responded. So that's what I'm trying to get across. And that's what I shared in my commentary on stream, that yeah, sure, they didn't throw the N-word out, which is what I think server owners usually pay attention to, like blatant forms of racism. But if people are treating your character's experience differently based on the assumptions that they have about them because of their race or their gender, there's a lot of bias mixed in that. And that's something that I don't think a lot of these people are equipped to recognize. And it's something that they don't listen to or they don't want to hear. All right, but we moved on. Didn't bring it up again. I really focused on getting the saloon together and starting to gather all the ingredients to cook meals, because you have to like literally hunt and fish and do all the things to put meals together. I started setting up my character's life. She got a house. I started like really putting roots down there. I had a home like deep in the bayou, and I just kept role playing and kept focus on building up a staff and building up all the ingredients and all the things that I needed for my saloon, and also just trying to keep her alive, keep her getting money from doing like bounty hunting and all these random things, like things to actively keep her engaged and actively set up a life and get into that type of role play, which is what I'm really interested in. After that, friends of mine started joining the server, friends, and you know, some of them were viewers, others were also creators and streamers. One of my mods joined as my cousin. Another mod was going by Lily, who just started like exploring the city. She was heavy into fishing. I hired a couple of people at the saloon. I know there was another viewer of ours who I also hired at the saloon, but she also took ownership of a newspaper in St. Denis or St. Dennis. St. Denis. We've been saying St. Denis, but I don't know if that's an accent thing. Another streamer that I know came in and he joined the sheriff's office. So we were basically just trying to add to the overall world. I think another role player that I know, he came in to be a hunter. He started supplying the saloon. I mentioned that character Violet, she was also hunting and started supplying the saloon. So we were just trying to spread out, have our own role play stories, and go around this server the way I like to do. Usually when I invite viewers and people to join the server, I don't want a collection of people around me nonstop. I want people to be able to build their own lives and spread out. That's why I'm not usually super quick to share what server I'm in, because I want to be able to be sure I protect my experience and make sure people aren't just coming straight to me when they get into a server. But almost immediately after we started to get our roots in, all of us started being harassed in different ways, depending on the interactions that we were having with this wider community. The newspaper character, for example, she was followed inside her office at the newspaper. You got shot.
We've been looking for these people.
Around here?
Yeah, it was over actually down the tracks over there.
Oh, no. You know who did it? They were hunting or something?
They shot me in the chest, but I went to the doctor. Yeah, it's about 4 of them riding around, and the lawmen won't do nothing about it, so I've just been riding around. One of them got a orange mask and like a blue suit or something on, and he chased me all the way through St. Denis and then shot me.
Just shot? Hold on, I hear somebody riding.
Yeah, I was at the St. Denis Times over there just doing some stuff, and they had pulled up and barged in the building, so I had ran out the back, and they one of them chased me down.
Oh, they bothering you? Your place of business? How long ago was this?
Shot me over by the water. Hour or 2 ago, maybe.
The law in the city wouldn't help her. Anytime we actually needed help by law, we had to go through the person in our community that worked for the law, because no one else was interested in helping. Lily, who plays like the sweetest little character, she was approached and cornered constantly.
Now, truly, you wouldn't think we'd have to in a place like St. Denis.
You can't sell the growing ones to the herbalist though. Right. And made uncomfortable just trying to exist in the streets. And this was all happening down in St. Denis, where we decided to make home. My character's friend, so Violet, who is also the sweetest one, she was robbed out in the open. And another viewer mentioned like their bakery was getting tagged in St. Denis. And this was just all happening in this neighborhood that we decided to call home. It's a southern neighborhood. It looks a bit like New Orleans. It was adjacent to where I actually put my home, but it's where a lot of us were settling down. So I have no reason to believe they were targeted because of me. I really think it was just bad role play. It was nonstop and disruptive to anyone trying to build stories. And what I do know is when I finally said something, the reaction was just like immediate and hostile. And suddenly the Confederate comment and the experiences that I was having previously was brought up again, used as fuel to like discredit me or to call me stupid, which they continue to do. And the harassment didn't let up. So at this point, I said something directly to like the gang that was doing all of this, to all of these different players that were in the South. They robbed Jackson, Violet, and Justice. Is her name Justice? I've been making shit up sometimes. That just feels appropriate. We met once before, and I remember you mentioned having a crew around St. Denis. Well, it seems your crew been running Wild gunning down
Yes.
folks I break bread with, and I've held my tongue long enough as a long-standing resident in Lemoyne, and someone who has supported your business, sending plenty of people your way. Hold on. And also, like, it just seemed like weak roleplay. Like, I don't understand why gangs are coming this heavy for people in their businesses that are minding their business. I feel like it felt very GTA, very like 100K or die out of nowhere. These weren't people that were trying to build stories. These weren't people that were trying to be immersed in the roleplay. They were just running around trying to win and kill and rob and do whatever they could to any player that they had. And like I said, it was getting disruptive. And this was coming from a player who I had actually met in roleplay previously.
That's no worry, sir.
Yeah,
All right, Miss Meela, I think we're all set.
Okay, wait, so we don't owe you anything for the guns?
No, free of charge.
Oh,
Free of
thank you.
charge. No problem.
Yeah, very kind, very generous, mister.
I appreciate your business. First
Yeah, we'll be
business
sure
is
to-
the deals.
We'll be sure if we set up here in town, we'll be sure to return the favor.
Perfect. Tell your friends and everyone that you know I've got a deal on. Tell them to buy me out because this business is going bankrupt.
So he was the one I hit up, and I was like, look, this is getting out of hand. And like I said, immediately just like crazy.
Weapons down.
You still got a gun in your hand, you pulled yours first. I ain't
You
putting
got
nothing down
5
in my own
seconds.
shop.
You pull it
You
out first.
pulled
Put it in
your
your- you have 5
pistol out
seconds.
first.
You have 5 seconds.
Did you forget?
1.
I know you playing in
I'm
my
telling
own
you
shop.
now.
You need to get
I will
out. You
do
either
this.
get out, 'cause I ain't putting my gun down in my own shop.
I'll shoot you outside the door. Don't fucking test me. Oh, you don't really?
Nope, go on ahead.
You really don't?
Go on ahead. Cause what did I just say? I ain't putting my... Girl, why can't I shoot? But yeah, so up at this point, so after I say something too, the harassment didn't let up. So every time I logged in, it got worse. This was like over the span of a week, over very long streams. I was streaming like 8 to 9 hours every time I went in there. But players that I never met knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, where I lived.
Speaking of the devil,
Look at this. Because
Look at
how you
that.
think they know exactly where we at?
Mm.
Oh, you know what? Let me
Galloping around. Go.
just had to kill that gator. I was just trying to protect my little old...
Oh, they shot back. You saw that? Which at this point, we had only told like 3 or 4 people where I even lived. And those 3 or 4 people were the ones also receiving that level of harassment. No one but the people that I was actually standing there with knew was mine. And this was after hours of traveling around the map. This is not like they followed me from one place to another and we got there. We would travel for hours around the map. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up, but basically this was, I think, at around the 4-hour mark of my stream, when after they had been just standing around watching us all day in Valentine, running over to her little saloon, setting it on fire, and then running away, and we leave Valentine, taking our sweet time to see if anyone follows us, right? And then we end up getting chased by outlaws, going to the Heartlands. It takes us actually like 15 minutes or so to get back to the bayou, and once we're there, we both go AFK inside the cabin. I put on a BRB screen. 40 minutes later, they stroll up exactly to where I am again. Like, they had been doing this nonstop, and it was clear to me, it was clear to chat that they were watching the stream to see exactly where I was, because they just kept showing up. And also, sorry, I'm hoarse. It's early in the morning right now. It's been taking me a few days to edit this. They stalking me at this point. Cause what are you doing over here? Like, why are y'all so heavy on my dick? Protect your streets. When I come for you, I will. Y'all running around, stalking a bitch, trying to harvest stuff. Look at them, just sitting there on the tracks. Y'all gonna tell me y'all characters knew this is where I lived? Cause what you doing back here? That story y'all sticking to? Right. Y'all just showing up everywhere I am. You found me this deep in the bayou in the middle of the night in the fog. Yeah, probably. While I'm in the backyard in the dark. There was no one behind us because we were paranoid at this point because we were being harassed so heavily that we had our heads on a swivel, like we like to say. So no one was being followed. They were just showing up. No matter where I went in this server, they were there. So it became very clear at that point. They're watching my streams and they're finding my locations. They're showing up every time I turn a corner. They're standing around and trying to intimidate my character, yet they would never approach my character. They would never interact with me. They would do things like blow up my saloon or set it on fire and then run when I come back to avoid interaction. Address later. Yeah, it definitely wasn't one of y'all. Look up here, cause some trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to say bitch so bad.
Mm-mm-mm.
See, we're gonna keep it legal with Jimmy. Be like, I want
Trying to
this
set your place on
vandal
fire.
arrested. Oh, is that what they doing? They love to do it when I ain't here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What do they run? They really the type
Surely.
to hide their hand. Play their card and hide their hand. You know the type.
You must really like you. Be waiting out here, wasting that
Oh,
time.
finally that door's open. Mm-hmm.
Look at this little note for you. How
But anyway, I talked about it openly on stream. I think, my frustration was very clearly growing because, they're watching streams and they're popping up, yet later on they report me for metagaming. But if I was in there off stream, there was silence. No one was showing up where I was. No one knew where I was. I wasn't turning the corner, running into these same people nonstop who were avoiding interactions with me, but just doing things to my character's home or my saloon or anything like that. But the moment I turned my stream on, suddenly I could not avoid them. Okay, so let me get a little deeper into the exact situation that I had with this one gang that was choosing, that honestly has terrible roleplay. Every single interaction with them was terrible. I always had an admin in my chat asking me to report the situation. I'm gonna talk about my logic on reporting things, but I think people report stuff when they are really invested in helping the server improve. But I do think, generally speaking, as someone who's owned a server myself, and GTA, of course, there are mechanisms or ways you can understand and govern your city in a way where you're not requiring people that face the most harassment to spend all of their roleplay time submitting report after report after report on the same individuals. So when all my people were getting harassed, I reached out to this guy that was in that gang in St. Denis. Like I said, we had a previous conversation. He was gloating about the fact that he was in this gang. He wore his colors with his mask off, talking to us about being in this gang. So we knew exactly who he was. And I had so I'm saying telegrams like you have phones in GTA. I had his telegram code or postal, which is what we call it. And I told him what was going on, the constant harassment in St. Denis. And I said it was getting out of hand and that all of the people around me are being heavily targeted. He immediately claimed it wasn't his gang. He said it was a group of imposters, which honestly was ridiculous because one, it's a small server. The server is small in general. St. Denis wasn't heavily populated. So I was like, this whole idea that there's a whole imposter gang wearing your exact same colors who sound like you. Mind you, we don't use voices to recognize people, but the idea that many people are impersonating a whole gang of yours, it was just ridiculous. It was just nonsense. So my immediate commentary on stream was that this is a person who is doing things against women who are by themselves and constantly targeting them and murdering them time after time and then hiding his hand. Immediate commentary on stream, he's a bitch. And granted, I didn't say that in game because the term wasn't quite appropriate or time appropriate. Not appropriate because it was vulgar. It wasn't time appropriate. I immediately was like, this guy and this gang are just full of bitches. They're, individuals who will intimidate others and then immediately try to hide their hand. That is the term for it. This is not a gender related term. That is the action of being an actual bitch. You're too afraid to stand on business, to own up to what you're doing. That is what I called him. I was calling him on stream. Again, his character. We are not talking about real people. These are characters. Someone called my character a bitch on their stream, I'm probably going to giggle and be like, you're right. But we're talking about his character. I had a few back and forths with this guy where he immediately started threatening my character because I told him him and his gang are terrorizing my folks. And I was like, either get your gang together or if you claim it's imposters, get your streets together. So what are you talking about? What are we doing right now? As crude as you might think it is, again, it's my stream. No one's going to tell me what I can say in my own stream. That is later on what the server owner has an issue with. That I was calling him, his gang, and later on there is a girl that got herself involved in the situation, calling them all. They were all bitches because they were all doing the same thing. They were harassing people nonstop to the point where it was so disruptive to their role play that these people are confiding in me. And we're gonna talk about more about that. But there's a reason a lot of people confide in me in role play, because I'm gonna be confrontational. I'm gonna go straight to the person that I know is doing it. It was bitch behavior. I was expressing that in my own stream. Let's remind you. Did I call this man a bitch in character? No, I used more creative terms in character when he came up into my saloon. But on stream, yes, bitch behavior. But anyway, he traveled up to the saloon literally within minutes after that telegram exchange. We had gone back and forth while I was on my way to the saloon from St. Denis. If y'all don't know the map, this is a huge map that is a huge voyage, and they're on horses, so it takes a while. By the time I get to my saloon, before I even have time to open my inventory, he's there.
Never mind.
That sounds like Father Christmas.
This your saloon?
It is.
So
Say it again.
you must be Millie.
I am. You must be
So
the man
you're-
I was just talking to.
You are the man that you've just been threatening.
I ain't
Tell me
threatening
what
you.
the
You
fuck.
threaten.
Tell me. Hey,
Hey, don't cut me off.
Don't
You ain't gonna speak
over
over me. I don't know who you think you ain't
Who
come to my
the
establishment
fuck?
speaking over me.
Hey, I'll burn this bitch down.
Do
Don't
so.
test me.
You
Who the
acting big
fuck?
and tough.
Who
Y'all been
the
gunning
fuck?
down women, and they look like you, just like that mask.
I mean,
Just
we
with that
really
same
haven't.
mask.
We've had people going around in our colours. So before you start throwing threats,
I
on
didn't
the
throw
first
threats.
meal,
I told you need to get your people in check. You threatened
my
me.
people in check.
You
I'm not
threatened
being
me.
funny, but don't be coming to me all aggressive and shit.
Mind you, we didn't say where our saloon was. We didn't say what saloon we had. He claimed that he asked around and he found out who I was and he found out where I worked and where I was in the moment, and he showed up, if you say so. Because like I said, no matter where I went, these people were popping up every time I was on stream. Eventually, things with him, not even eventually, things with him escalated very quickly. He came in with a direct attitude. He immediately tried to control the scene and got immediately upset the moment my character started to speak over him. Like, he came in wanting to, one, intimidate me in my own space, refused to like leave, got mad that I had a weapon on me, was like, he even pulls a weapon out at one point and I pull mine out and then he gets mad about it and he said, you pulled yours out first. I'm like, continuing this bitch behavior. You pulled a gun out and then claimed you didn't. I was like, what is this bitch behavior?
But don't be coming to me all aggressive and shit. Check.
You
I'm not
threatened
being
me.
funny, but don't be coming to me all aggressive and shit.
You
when
coming
there's
to
people
me
going
all
around-
aggressive. What we talking about?
Put the weapons down from
You pulled a weapon out in my shop and you telling me to put a weapon down?
I'm telling you for a fact, put your fucking weapon down.
You are holding a weapon in my shop.
Hey, don't pull yours out first. But I'm
You
telling
pulled yours
now,
out.
we have
You pulled a
people.
pistol out first. But he did feel so entitled to the space and doing whatever he wanted. At one point, he even tried to do a countdown, telling me to put my own weapon away.
You have 5 seconds.
Did you forget?
One.
I know you playing in
I'm
my
telling
own
you
shop.
now,
You need to get
I will
out. You
do
either
this.
get out. 'Cause I ain't putting my gun down in my own shop.
I'll shoot you outside the door. You really don't.
Go on ahead. Cause what did I just say? I ain't putting my... Girl, why can't I shoot? He just really expected free reign to kind of intimidate and disrupt everyone else's role play. And this is someone in this server that continues to do this and they support him in it. But yeah, he ended up shooting my character right there in her saloon. The one action that we said they've been doing to all these other players that we know. Then he did, and claiming it was someone else, but he came and did the same thing that he's been doing to everybody else. But what's crazy is I was stuck on push to talk. So if you guys don't know about like the mechanics of GTA, you can have voice activate or RedM and GTA. You can just speak freely, which I don't do because you would get all my stream commentary, or you hold down a button to push to talk. For whatever reason, when he killed her, my voice was still coming through, even though I would release push to talk. So we kept talking, and I was talking him big shit. I was talking a whole lot of trash, and he was talking right back to me. He would kept telling me to shut up. He kept getting increasingly angry that I would not shut up. Mind you, I'm off push talk. Either I'm going to be talking out of character to my chat, or I'm just going to continue to engage with you because you're being real big, bad, and tough for what? And he had every opportunity to just walk away, knowing I wasn't shutting up. One, I didn't have the ability to, because I'm not going to sit here silent for like an EMS or a medical person to arrive. But he decided to stay right with me. He actually picked me up and carried me somewhere, continuing to argue with my downed body. And this was the moment where he like starts to call me stupid and talk about I brought up racism in the server and all this nonsense. And it was just generally trash roleplay. Like, one, the escalation was goofy, him shooting me inside of a business. And also the weird thing, every single time I aim at this character, specifically in this server, my gun malfunctions. My gun has never malfunctioned with anyone else, but whenever it's him, I can't even shoot my weapon. And this happens twice. Why my gun never at work when I hit him?
You really think you're something, you fucking idiots.
Why when he's here, my gun doesn't work?
Ah, you fucking melon. Look at you, once again, dead again, you fucking
Leave him.
dickhead.
Leave him. Leave him. Leave him.
Dead once again. Dead once a fucking again. You absolute
like
one.
20 seconds and never with anything else anywhere. Overall, it was just trash roleplay. There was an admin watching the stream at that point who also said it was trash roleplay, asked me to submit a ticket, didn't do it, wasn't gonna do it. It was bad escalation, and like every interaction with him was just bad. It's the same thing. It's this win-lose type roleplay. It's not immersive, it's not character driven, it's not story driven. It is just like this win-lose concept. And he kept saying that even out of character when I was dead, that you lost. But this type of roleplay was taking over the server at an alarming rate. So much so that, like I said, we had already been a tight group that just roleplayed with each other, but now we can't even do that because this sort of role play was so overwhelming and disruptive that we couldn't even carry out the stories that we were trying to carry out in the server. And it got to the point where our characters can't even walk down the street anymore. But anyway, yeah, like I said, the admin was watching. They actually stepped in and revived my character. They admitted that the role play was poor, that it wasn't handled well in general. But anyway, I still chose to stay in character. Millie woke up in the hospital. I forgot the last 15 minutes because that's usually a roleplay rule where if you end up respawning or going to the hospital, you can't remember the last 15 minutes of roleplay that led you there. So my character, that all happened within 15 minutes. My character had no recollection of it. So we just continued on with our day and I continued on with my roleplay. But honestly, from that point on, it just became so clear that this wasn't just rough roleplay. This wasn't just rough RP. It was something else entirely. The hostility, the aggression, the nonstop harassment was like showing up everywhere I went. Only when I streamed continued. And honestly, once there was a situation for a whole 9-hour stream where I was prepping things for the saloon, they were standing right outside. And every time I walked away from the saloon, they would do something to it. They were leaving float text all over the saloon. They were setting it on fire so it would blow up every couple of minutes. But only when I walk away. When I come back, they'd run off. So they, one, were refusing interaction. It was just like constant harassment. I just moved on in character and I figured I would probably have to bring in more people that I knew or more friends who are interested in gang roleplay so I could actually have storyline roleplay and they could consume themselves with that stupid cat and mouse back and forth type gang roleplay and I wouldn't have to be bothered with it. Like, y'all want to play big and tough with people that are interested in that roleplay and allow other people to have the story driven roleplay that they're interested in. So at that point I was like, okay, we just gonna have other people of ours join. I invited more people from stream. I invited some personal people that I knew that were gonna fly in because they liked that type of roleplay and I wasn't into it. I wasn't about to go in circles, literally nonstop circles with a group of guys and I guess a woman who were interested in just targeting women who are alone in their businesses or who are alone on the streets and robbing and murdering them every 2 seconds. Like, deal with other people that are interested in the roleplay. And mind you, there's a bunch of gangs in the city that they could have been interacting with, but they were targeting just individuals that are in their businesses and then targeting me heavily because I said it's unacceptable and they need to relax. But anyway, it didn't stop. For anyone who's not familiar, so like I said, they were putting float text around my places. Float text is basically, I'll put in a picture of it, but it's text that you can type in world that characters can leave behind anywhere. And these could represent like carvings in wood. They could be notes. Most people I hadn't seen anyone like trash talking people through float text at their businesses anywhere. My whole experience in the server. Most people were using it to relay information. Like if you owned a saloon, you might have your name and postal on the outside of the saloon if someone needs to put an order or get in touch with the owner for like a job or something. But they started using float text to write trash messages all over the saloon and then over her house deep in the bayou, which I said no one knew she lived there. Basically, the float text started appearing around the saloon. At first, it was kind of vague, and then it became direct. So someone put in like there were carved threats. There were messages signed in character. They set one up at her house that said something about like the witch lives here, the church is coming. So it really felt like they were trying to lead up to a role play where they were going to try to hang or burn Millie, which is like, after all this, that is really where you're gonna go with that? Okay, if you say so. Someone that we knew tried to justify their belief in thinking Millie was a witch. We talked about wanting to bring some sort of supernatural element to the role play on stream. Millie never uttered a word about any of that in character. Never mentioned any of it. Like, I think one time I ran into a character in a church. So like, it's never, I don't know why the assumption is that she was a witch or where that was coming from. It really felt genuinely coded. It felt like it was a setup for a certain type of role play that I would have found unacceptable. Not sure the server would have thought so. But meanwhile, they're leaving these float texts behind, but they're also refusing to approach my character in game. So it's not even giving the opportunity to have any sort of role play. They're stalking her, they're leaving texts all over the place, and they're running when she appears or shows up, except for the one dude. But yeah, it was getting very frustrating. One, they were showing up everywhere because they were metagaming. They continue to dodge any sort of actual scene building or back and forth storytelling. Instead, they were just really using the most basic server rules, which I guess there's like a rule that you have to speak to someone for 45 minutes or 45 seconds before you can kill them. So they're using the bare minimum server rules to continuously stalk and murder our characters. And honestly, at this point, it just felt like griefing and just like disrupting actual role play for dozens of people. Like it didn't even feel like Red Dead at this point. It felt like GTA style trolling or trash role play that we're used to in GTA and 100K or die servers, but like behind a cowboy hat. So maybe on stream, I talked about it. I talked my shit like I do, because like I said, I commit my streams to showing my actual experience. I feel like when I first started in GTA, a lot of these trash experiences that I was having, especially the stuff that felt very targeted because I was a woman, or a lot of the harassment I faced, it felt personal. It felt like, why are people coming down on me like this? And then I started to realize a lot of people go through this. So I'm never going to hide the harassment or my reaction or my feelings about the harassment from my stream. If a server is trash, the server is trash. My stream's gonna know it. But anyway, later on, I don't know if it was them that reported me or who reported me, but later on they report me for making inappropriate comments on my stream. Loki, and I'm sure they clipped and took very small segments of it and twisting commentary, or twisting a moment of commentary where I was mocking the gang's cowardice and their general group behavior. What is this shit? Alexa, bitch, shut up. How do you remove this? We ain't got time for no catty bitch carving things in. I don't give a fuck about none of that, Alexa. How do you remove this? Can you not? I gotta keep this dumb shit on my thing. Alexa, do it when I'm here. What a pussy. Is that whole gang a bitch? Because like I said, it was bitch behavior, and that was what we were talking about on stream. And we were talking about their characters. Let's mind you, because a lot of people can't seem to separate character from themselves. But I was talking on my stream about this cowardice behavior that was getting frustrating. They were metagaming the hell out of me, and they were avoiding role play while harassing me, and it was just bitch behavior. And like, I'm not gonna stop saying the word bitch. I say the word bitch every 2 seconds, but we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna show clips of exactly what I said, but they labeled this rant that I had as sexist because there was a woman that signed her name in the float text that was on the bar. And at that point, I had been dragging this entire game, talking about their bitch behavior, and it wasn't just her. But I'm gonna be real clear about kind of the content that I create. We are very dedicated into finding roleplay situations and servers that are safe for women, people of color, queer players, Black women, especially in Red Dead roleplay, where we're facing both the racism and the sexism that a lot of people feel. So we didn't even know who this character was that signed her name, but I very, very clearly and very directly and very strongly said, any woman who is going to ally with men who are dedicated on targeting women who are alone in a roleplay server and continuously harassing them and making it impossible for them to have roleplay is a pick-me-ass bitch. And she is, and I will stand by that. I'm not giving like random free passes because all women need to stick together. If you're choosing to make the experience for other women in a server that hard, you're a bitch along with your bitch ass gang. And that is exactly what I was relaying in my stream commentary, and is exactly what I continue to think right now. We can't call her a bitch in game because, again, not time period appropriate. So what did we call her? We called her a heifer. I looked up phrases because I was talking about the person who signed their name, and again, didn't know who this was, talking about literally an idea of a person. If there was a woman that was supporting this gang, harassing and killing women in their businesses, this person is a pick-me-ass bitch. What we call a pick-me-ass bitch in 1901, we gonna call her a heifer. We gonna call her and her whole gang a lapdog. And this is where I'm assuming they got a little confused, because I called them all lapdogs, her specifically, because I was talking about her in that moment, because I was reacting to float text signed by a woman that I didn't know. We didn't know who signed this specifically. We saw a name, but again, anyone could have signed her name. So we were just saying, if there is a woman involved, this is a lapdog ass pick me bitch. And a lapdog, if y'all don't know what it is just someone who takes orders from another person willingly. It is like being a puppet for someone else. That is what that translates to. The server owner later comes at me talking about I am a sexist, bigoted, whatever, for saying this girl had a train run on her and her gang and that she was a heifer and all this shit. Pardon me? One, me calling her a bitch or a lapdog had nothing to do with her identity. Just because you want to associate that word with women, that's your problem. I called her a lapdog and a pick-me-ass bitch because of her behavior and her gang's behavior. And I was only talking about this idea of a woman that would be with that gang because I was reacting to additional harassment that I was facing on the server via float text and avoidance. It wasn't even about this individual character. It was about the whole gang. They were all pick-me-ass bitches. I don't give a fuck about none of that. To be clear, because I don't know how it got misconstrued, but I'm assuming, like, if you take clips and moments from the rant that I was on during stream, the behavior, it was the behavior that I was calling out. Doing something messy and avoiding accountability, constantly harassing someone via in-game mechanics like float text, blowing up someone's business, and then running away. I use that same language for all of them. Because it was about cowardice, not identity. I didn't care that she was a woman. She was a part of these people, and she's being grouped in with these people that I'm calling a bitch, because they were, and I stand by that. And will continue to stand by that. That's kind of what made it ridiculous. They felt so empowered. They felt so empowered to continue targeting solo women at their businesses or women that were just walking around in the middle of the day in character. And the moment I pushed back publicly, they try to, one, flip the narrative and report me for all these different things that I was saying in my own stream. Even if I was calling her a bitch because I genuinely didn't like her and I thought it was just about her, that's my stream. I'm gonna say what I want to say in my stream. It's crazy to me that a server thought they were even going to dictate the commentary I have in stream. At no point did they ask for the full context. At no point did they ask for the full rant even to understand what I was talking about or who I was talking about. Like I said, we didn't even really know who this person was. We were talking about the idea of a woman who would align herself with men who have been constantly harassing women is a bitch, and she will forever be a bitch. I ain't changing my mind on it. Came at me sideways, calling me names, questioning my character without even asking for the full scope of the situation. A courtesy that they gave someone when they were being a racist, but not when they assumed it was sexism. Now that we brought up the fact they reported me and the server owner responded very directly to me, throwing around a lot of accusations about my character and all this other stuff, I'm gonna show y'all the message. At one point, I brought someone completely new to the server. This is someone who I have a personal relationship. Like, this is my dude. This is someone I know. I helped him create his character and was helping him literally get through his first hour in the server. He is someone who, one, has never played Red Dead Redemption 2. He has never played Red Dead Roleplay, and he has also just not ever played roleplay. He's done a little bit of GTA, but it's always been Crash Out, 100K or Die GTA. So it wasn't the immersive roleplay that we're getting into here. So I was helping him a lot, not only understanding what's acceptable and what's not, but understanding the actual in-game mechanics, like, and the language that people were using. Like, at one point, someone told him to flex his R to do something, which they were trying to tell him to press his R button on his keyboard.
You flex your arm muscle.
Yeah, which arm muscle?
Yeah, just hit R.
Just the arm muscle.
Your arm muscle.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Now I know. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, come on. We gotta teach him words.
Come in this carriage, Henry.
Oh yeah, so when they say muscle, that just means like button. But he doesn't have the full experience, and he's not gonna go memorize a channel where they've listed a bunch of terms. Like, he didn't know what they were saying, and they were going back and forth about this flex your R shit. So he and I are in a Discord call. I come off deafen to tell him what this man is talking about because he was not getting it. And we were at this like fighting event that was glitched out, which happens in the server all the time. There are a lot of people in one place. No one could hear anyone. Everyone was like silent. He was asking other players questions, and people were just not responding to him and walking away from him. So he was getting increasingly frustrated, thinking that he's being ignored in roleplay and that people are just being weird. This is not fun.
What's up, homie? I'm next. What's cracking?
Stop saying homie. Oh my god. He gonna get banned. I don't think anybody can hear.
Which one of these fools need that?
He needs to come off me on Discord and listen to me. I told him he can't just be talking stupid. He was doing fine all day earlier, and now he around people don't know how to act. Can I help you? The fuck? So I come off mute to talk to him, to tell him how things work, to tell him what to do, how to fix his audio or check his audio. He and I are going back and forth a bit, trying to see if he can hear me. I end up re-logging to come back in and see if it'll fix itself. We're having technical issues on top of him already not understanding a lot of the mechanics, and I'm hand-holding him literally through it via Discord call, which is, yeah, technically against server rules. You're not supposed to use out-of-game communication to put your characters at an advantage. But this is why I say these rigid rules and no fucking common sense are stupid. And this is what the server owner came at me for, is being in a Discord call, helping someone their first hour in the server, maybe 2 hours. I don't know how long it took for him to create his character and for us to go to this place. But we're in there surrounded by a bunch of people who are all glitching. Like, it's their server mechanics that are actually run down and constantly glitching, but it's glitching. No one can hear each other. I don't even think that issue resolved itself until like 20 or 30 minutes later. So we're in this Discord call, and again, accused me of metagaming because I was in a Discord call with him. At no point was this about us trying to gain an unfair advantage over anyone else. He's standing next to me in a group of people. We're on a deafen call that I'm only coming off a deafen to actually tell him how to do something. And that is me metagaming. But fine. Most servers have it in their rules that you can't be on Discord calls. But if I'm bringing my friend into a server and they literally can't figure shit out, what are we supposed to talk out of character in a group full of people? A group full of people that are looking like they're completely ignoring a brand new character after watching all the shit that we've been going through already. Sure. Finally, as everything escalated, I was reported. I'll put the message here. Actually, I should react to the message in a minute. In the next section, I'll react to the actual message, but I noticed a pattern. No one from leadership reached out to me. Not once. No one asked what happened, even though there were several instances where their admins were witnessing the level of harassment and the terrible roleplay that I was facing. It was a very different situation from when they rushed to defend the Confederate comment, when they rushed to understand his perspective on using it. Back then, they were eager to hear both sides. This time, I was written off without question. So instead of engaging, they sent me a very direct warning, again, questioning my character. And, there was nothing in there even asking, like, what is going on? We got this, it's just like common sense shit. Like, I feel like even in GTA, they're like, hey, we got this report on you. Can you join a sit? Or can you respond to this report? Or like, what's going on here? None of that. It was a direct judgment on me, what I say in my stream. I think they even brought up that I was using my stream chat to, we'll talk about it, child. It was very clear, I think, that they didn't intend for fairness. They probably got clips out of context or whatever. If they still think that I'm not supposed to help the people that I bring into the server, or I'm supposed to use friendly language to the people that have been showing bias toward me since I stepped foot in the server, since my third day in the city. If I'm supposed to feel sympathy for a woman that chose to be with a gang that's constantly harassing people, whatever. I don't give a damn. I won't be there then. That's ultimately why I decided to leave. Because if you really think that's who I'm going to be on the side of, and that's who I'm in there to protect, you're out of your mind. It's clear that they're protecting these people because, like, nonstop, so many people in my Discord server kept showing moments of the same types of run-ins with these type of people, or these people that were in the server doing it, even showing me reports about them, and the response from the server was always something to coddle that gang and make sure their experience was good. Honestly, I probably could have taken, because they sent me a stern warning, that's what this was. I probably could have taken the stern warning that I'm sure they did not give to the Confederate comment, but what finally actually made me step away is the actual quality of the roleplay in the server. Like I said, it was so degraded. By the time we were deeper into our stories, it was becoming impossible to have any sort of story that wasn't fueled by being harassed, assaulted, murdered nonstop by other individuals that were participating in gang roleplay. Not, instead of them coming together and having their gang roleplay with one another, it was directed towards us and was nonstop, and it was annoying. So if the roleplay itself wasn't bad, I might have responded to this stern warning, even though they were talking to me like I was a fucking child, which is crazy. Remember, you're dealing with fucking adults at the end of the day. It was a handful. I had a handful of great players, or there were literally only a handful of people outside of the group of role players that that we brought in here that I even had decent interactions with. And like, they were so few and far between that it wasn't worth it for me to stay here. If I came in here with a group of great role players, we can go anywhere and we're going to be fine and have great role play. But when your server and when the individuals in your server are so disruptive to storyline that we can't even role play on a regular basis, that was enough for me. And I was like, it's not even worth it responding to this nonsense to even be here, because the role play is already trash. And like, when I look at the broader community, outside of maybe 2 or 3 interactions in general, all I was doing, or all I got from the broader community was a bunch of gang, or one gang specifically, playing cat and mouse. They had already run out a few people that I knew in the server. They're starting fights, they run off, they're dodging consequences, they're avoiding actual storylines, they're not even interested in like back and forth, they're just like being ridiculous. It wasn't roleplay, they weren't interested in building something, they just wanted control, and they wanted a win-lose roleplay no matter what, and the server is the one that was giving it to them. So if you want a chaos, it just seems like a waste of time to like even submit an application and build a character to come into a server and play like that. But if you're looking for a 100k or die type server in fucking RedM, there you go. But anyway, server let them, they encouraged it. And like I said, they do this with rules and these bare level, these basic level technicalities that reward low end roleplay. And I think if that wasn't there, I might have wanted to respond to the comment. And like, I started to, and I think I even cut myself off, and I was like, you know what, you got it. I get you. Do you. I'm not going to go somewhere that doesn't value actual storytelling. That's what I'm here for. That's what attracted me to Red Dead roleplay in the beginning. And I'm definitely not going to fight for space and community that has seemed to want me gone from the start and that has made the roleplay just uncomfortable from the start. I'm sure as hell not going to let anyone police how I speak to my audience and what we talk about freely, openly, and bluntly. Because if I'm going through it on camera, I'm sure a whole lot of people are experiencing the same things, thinking no one's gonna notice, no one's gonna see it. Left, I'm done with that server. I don't recommend it. I'm not the only one. I've heard from others. Like I said, I remember I even addressed my stream at one point because there are a bunch of people coming to me talking about how bad the server was. And they're like, as a streamer, I figured you'd want to know instead of like telling your community to join there. And my statement was, I do not control where y'all go. I don't control where you join. I share my experience and I give you a full view of what I experienced so you can make the choice or decision to go into a server. I was not recruiting for the server. At one point, I was telling people where I go because a lot of people always want to join me in a server. And at one point, I got open about it because, like I said, if they want to come in here and play gang roleplay, let them do it. But like looking back at how many people were talking about how terrible the experience in here was for them, I don't recommend. And I don't think I've ever come on a video or a YouTube video and say I don't recommend this server, but I don't recommend it because often, it's just like profound that I hadn't experienced what they had experienced yet, but the fact that we all have similar experiences, and unfortunately a lot of them don't have streams or clips to back it up, and knowing they wouldn't be believed, that they just chose to leave. So it is what it is. I'm not done with RedM. Loving RedM. I'm already in a new server. We're gonna see how that is. Again, I think the lesson that I've learned from here is to give myself time to really allow the way it functions to truly reveal itself. But yeah, shall we go through this message? Hold on. Let me put this message up. But we're gonna put this up here. Let me see. My formal and final warning regarding my behavior in and around the server. First and foremost, you're not to use third-party communications while on the service, regardless of whether you're streaming or not. This includes messaging apps, voice channels, or Twitch chat as a means to gain information or communicate outside the IC environment. These actions fall under metagaming and break fundamental rules of roleplay. Mind you, I was in a Discord call that day, like I mentioned, common sense shit, helping him figure shit out. And at no point have we ever discussed anything in chat that we didn't first discuss and play out in character. So there were a couple of moments where Justice, or I'm not gonna pull out names, where the individual who owned the newspaper came to me, we talked it all through, we hashed it out, we went to her business to review what had happened to her. We talked about it all in character. And yes, later on, I'm having commentary about it. I'm talking about it. And she's talking about her experience as well in chat. Mind you, we've already worked out on roleplay. Same with another character who's playing that he worked at the sheriff's office. He told me some stuff in character. We worked out in character. And later on, I had commentary in my chat. He participated in that conversation, but revealed nothing additional. Even in the chat, there were several times where he was like, oh, I'm going to tell you when I get in. I'm going to tell you once I fly in. I'm going to try to fly in today and I'll tell you. So there is never a point where we use my stream chat to do any sort of metagaming or find out anything that we hadn't already worked through in character. So additionally, using your Twitch chat to gather in-character information or encouraging others to relay information back to you is strictly prohibited. Beyond that, we've been made aware of extremely let's approach that comment first. So at the end of streams, a lot of times when I raid someone else from the stream, I'm like, okay, go find out what was happening or whatever. Even if I'm watching someone else's stream and I can see what's happening, there has never been a point we use that in character. And at no point is that, oh, go see what's happening in that stream and come relay it back to me. It's literally for your understanding of the story, because so you can be entertained through multiple perspectives, go check out this other stream. That is why we raid. That is why we support other streamers. That is why we pull up to other streams. I'm not watching anyone else's stream trying to find out more about something related to my story that I haven't worked out in character. Be just dumb, just fucking stupid. Beyond that, we've been made aware of extremely inappropriate comments made on your stream about another player, including suggesting that she is being passed around by her gang and referring to her as a heifer. Never said shit about her being passed around by her gang. Called her a lapdog plenty of times. They were all lapdogs. Do I need to look up the definition of lapdog? I don't understand how we're not understanding what a lapdog is. Someone who is willing to do anything that a more important person tells them to do. Opposition parties accuse the newspaper's editor of being a government lapdog. That does not mean she's being passed around by her gang. I don't even know. For check GPT to give me a term for pick-me's. It stops when you leave. All right, let me see. Here are historically fitting terms Millie could use for that type of woman in character. A lapdog. Well, thank you for the resub. A hearth clinger, a barnyard sweetheart, a man's echo. That's the one. Just weird. But she was, in fact, a heifer. And again, this wasn't even about a specific player, right? This was about a character that we didn't know who it was that was leaving float text. This was about the idea of a woman who was supporting a gang, who was targeting women who are alone, walking down the street or in their businesses and murdering them. The idea of that was she was a pick-me-ass bitch. If I were to quote me specifically, I'll try to find that clip specifically. And I was like, if that is a woman with their gang doing that, that's what she is. And then we were like, let's find a time appropriate term for it. It was heifer. It was not about her identity, and it was not even about a specific player. It was about a character, an idea of a character. So please. But that kind of language is sexist, derogatory, and completely unacceptable. It promotes a toxic and harmful culture that we do not tolerate in this community. Our server is meant to be a respectful and inclusive space, and that kind of commentary violates not only our rules, but our values. Let this serve as your one and only warning. Any further behavior of this nature will result in an immediate ban time with no further discussion. We expect better from every member of this community, on stream, off stream, and in every interaction. What makes you think? What makes you think at all you can dictate my commentary on a character in general, but a character that wasn't even specific to a player? We didn't know exactly who this person was. So it was, and my commentary was directly on the idea of a player who would do these type of actions. I am not going to sugarcoat shit for your server because y'all are so connected to your characters that you don't know the difference between a character and a player, or the idea of a character and an actual character. Like I said, if someone were to call Millie a bitch on stream, people have, and we be in the stream kikiing about it. But lovely that you and your streamers allow you to dictate their commentary on stuff. Again, nothing we've ever said or I've discussed in a stream had not already been worked out in character in game. And there was nothing ever that was ever used in chat that was used in game. Like I said, the idea of a woman that's going to support that type of behavior, she was a pick-me-ass bitch, and I called her that. And I stand by it. I'll call her it again. Not that I knew who it was. Not that we knew that this person even existed. I don't think my experience is just a one server issue. Like I mentioned, it is part of a larger problem in roleplay communities in general across platforms. And I think each one has its own flavor of dysfunction, and you should be aware of this before you go into a server. You know, in Second Life, the tension isn't even only about bigotry, and it's about, one, a complete lack of standards in general. Sometimes there are experiences of blatant racism that happen constantly because people are anonymous and feel real comfortable doing that type of thing. There's weird age play stuff that still tarnishes like the overall community. But I think what fuels the chaos in Second Life constantly is that, and just like moderation apathy. People can say or do whatever they want. The platform initially made no effort to stop them, even when the call was coming from inside the house. And I think if you're in a Second Life community, you know about that situation coming up. But there were no guardrails. There's no consequence. It's just unchecked behavior has turned into the norm. People expect that now when they go into Second Life. I think in in GTA, the issue shifts. It's not always like as obvious, but it can be like deeply systemic. There's heavy sexism, there's queer phobia, and there's this like over masculinized energy that is in a lot of the role play. If your character wasn't submissive or flirty or playing into someone's fantasy, girl, you get ignored or worse. I think generally women who don't play along get punished. Queer characters get completely dismissed or targeted and abused heavily. And if you're not like a romantic interest, you're often treated like an NPC or just out of the loop entirely. So it's basically, it's a lot of selective inclusion based on who you serve in the server or in the scene. And now I think RedM is dressed up a little differently, but the patterns are still there. It's what I've seen is just general leadership bias. I hear a lot of people complain about in GTA, but again, I try to stay in my lane and mind my business in these servers and just surround my people with like surround myself with good role players. Sometimes the larger community, a few members from them come into it, but when you're being targeted, that's hard to do. Leadership bias, selective enforcement. I think a lot of shallow role play that's disguised as something deeper. Just because we're in a different time period, people assume that it's deeper role play or that it's story driven, and it's not. People can't even identify the difference between a character and a player. But players tend to lean on these rule technicalities to harass other people, especially those who aren't interested in that low effort, like gang back and forth. And then like naturally servers, they're ignoring harm unless it's the most extreme version. And then I think even, leadership not approaching situations in a consistent or proactive way. So it enforces or it almost forces active players to constantly report and disrupt their own role play or just stay quiet and deal with it, which is what I was trying to do. But knowing will likely be dismissed or probably blamed for the very behavior that has been targeting us all along. I love using experiences that I go through to kind of highlight what I'm talking about, but I think this is about patterns that keep showing up in role play spaces and various communities, especially when you're a Black woman with a voice. And that has been my experience. And especially when I'm someone who is not going to play passive, I'm not going to play agreeable. If I am met with bigotry, I don't think it needs to be reciprocated with politeness. But I think, we're in a space where like basic respect becomes optional, where criticism is seen as aggression, and where speaking up about racism, bias, sexism, or even just bad role play immediately gets you villainized. Like I said, the vibe after that whole situation and me calling it out was completely different in the city, and I could see it from jump for how the other characters treated me. And that is why I just try to stay away from them. A lot of times the people that are creating those problems, they're protected by silence, loopholes. But anyway, I've been through this before. Second Life, GTA, and each time the names change, but honestly the dynamics do not. We are very used to this type of behavior. And I know we talked about sensitive topics, and I know it'll ruffle feathers and people may say I'm being too sensitive or too aggressive or causing drama, but this is honestly, I'm not trying to stay small so other people can remain comfortable. I'm here because I invest my time in these spaces, and I want to make sure I'm going to spaces that I'm comfortable recommending to my community, where I don't have to feel like I'm taking on the burden of the complaints of a server because the server doesn't care about most of its players. No, absolutely not done with roleplay. Not even done with GTA roleplay, girl. We just on a little bit of a break. I do genuinely love roleplay, but I am done like trying to shrink into places and stick around in places and just try to stay in my lane that don't want me there in the first place. Like, who knows? But if you're watching any of this and it resonates, if you ever felt silenced or excluded or gaslit in a space that claims to care about immersion and community, just know you're not alone, child. And you're not crazy. I think, I grappled with this a little bit because usually if something really irritates me about a server, I'll leave. In this case, honestly, I may have stayed if the roleplay was good here, but I don't even want to get in the habit of that. If there is a slight, because I ignored, I think, a lot of red flags, like I mentioned. Like I said, the vibe here was different. People were treating me weird since I called out that Confederate comment. And like I said, I didn't make up that Confederate comment. I wasn't lying about it. The person person who told me, which later on they try to blame the person who told me. They try to say that he was the drama. He was trying to start a fire and a mess. But at the end of the day, the man said what he said. And like I said, I could respect how he approached it later. It doesn't explain the bias that they had for my character who they barely knew yet. It doesn't explain the discomfort that a lot of other players came to me about experiencing in their server. It doesn't explain any of that. A lot of times I be trying to stick around and make it work. I ain't doing that no more. We have learned. We deserve better, and I will keep showing up for the kind of role play that actually builds something meaningful and interesting and allows us to tell stories and isn't about, I don't know, I guess the 100K or die gang cat mouse can be fun for some things, and maybe we'll enjoy a little bit of that on some days, but that is not the primary target for my type of role play. But anyway, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Down in Louisiana, where the tall, tall pine trees grow, there live a preacher daughter and she knows how to jelly roll. And a pop